just moved our niece's heifers up here to a show. And so if you see Clint walking around our hotel room, just ignore that it ever happened.
Well, that's good.
Sam and I just came back from Oklahoma City. We thought of you several times.
Thank you. It's hot up here, about 1,000,000 degrees. So I'm sorry you were up here in the heat also.
Actually, it wasn't.
So
It wasn't that bad.
Oh, good. It just waited for me, I guess.
Yeah.
I was in San Francisco for 2 weeks. It was 70 every day. It was wonderful.
They have the best weather in San Francisco.
Yeah. Except they haven't had rain for a year.
Ooh, that's tough.
Yeah. Getting ready for the fire season, unfortunately.
Yes, they had a hard go last year, so hopefully it won't be near that bad this year. But
Yeah.
we'll see. All right, it is 6. So Myrna, are you down there? I see you popping in and out.
I'm here.
Are we good to go with quorum on your end?
Let me just take attendance. Lawrence Romero. Carolee Nunn.
Here.
Michael Walton.
Here.
Justine Curry.
Here.
Steve Johnston.
Here. Hello, everybody.
Hi. Terry Hyde.
Here.
Catherine Morales.
Here.
Pam Mitchell. Robert McCabe.
Here.
So it looks like we do have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you, Myrna. Well, since it's now 6:01 and we've called attendance on June 10th, I want to welcome everyone to our meeting of the City of Georgetown Historic and Architectural Review Commission. Welcome to this meeting. Commission members are appointed by the mayor and city council. The commission is responsible for hearing and taking final action on applications for certificates of appropriateness based upon the city council adopted downtown and old town design guidelines and the Unified Development Code. We will be considering the cases before us individually as follows. Staff will make a presentation of the case, and then I will give the commissioners an opportunity to ask questions to staff. After the staff presentation, the applicant or their representative will have up to 10 minutes to present their project, followed by questions from the commissioners. Once staff and the applicant have addressed questions from the commissioners, we will then open the meeting for the public hearing. If you would like to speak on an agenda item, please wait until the public hearing is open for that item. Raise your hand when that item is being discussed, and staff will call your name when it is your turn. Please clearly state your full name and your address. Each person that has signed up to speak on the item will have up to 3 minutes. The speaker may allot their time to another speaker for a maximum of 6 minutes. If a speaker wishes to allot their time to another speaker, please raise your hand and indicate so, along with your name and address, and to whom you will be allotting your time. Please remember that all comments and questions must be addressed to the commission. After everyone who has signed up has spoken, I will close the public hearing and provide a few minutes of rebuttal time to the applicant if they so choose. After that, I will ask the commissioners for additional questions to the applicant or to staff. Following this set of questions, I will ask the commissioners for a motion and a second, followed by deliberation. Then the commissioners will vote. If the applicant or a member of the public has questions or concerns following a vote on an agenda item, please communicate those to the recording secretary so the staff can follow up with you. Okay, with that, hey Lawrence, good to see you.
Hi.
Mark, just want to make sure you know he's here. We'll move right on into our legislative. Oh, before we move to our legislative agenda, we have one matter of business that actually is 2. The first is we need to nominate and select a vice chair, and then see what we want to do about secretary. So at this time, I would like to open nominations for a vice chair. If you guys remember, I served as vice chair for half a second, and then Amanda Parr moved on to city council, and so that position, and I moved up to chair, so that position is now open. Any nominations, or anyone like to self-nominate?
Am I allowed to ask if anybody's interested in being the vice chair?
Of course.
Is anybody interested in being the vice chair?
Terry, would you like to be the vice chair?
No, I'm asking that question of the panel.
Guys, I'll do it if you want me to. Or Michael, you do it.
I was thinking Michael too. Are you interested in that, Michael?
Yes, I mean, I would, but I'm pausing for other nominations since I'm now with Lawrence here. I'm second newest.
I'll nominate Michael Walton.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you all. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, with that, Myrna, will you please do a vote for Michael Walton to be our vice chair?
Yes. Lawrence Romero,
Aye. Yes.
Caroline Nunn,
Aye, yes. Sorry.
Michael Walton,
Yes,
Faustine Curry,
Yes.
Steve Johnston,
Yes.
Terry Hyde,
Yes.
Catherine Morales.
Yes.
That motion passes 7-0.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, so our next position that we,
Thank you, Michael.
thank you.
yes, congratulations, Michael. I'm sorry. We definitely appreciate you putting yourself out there. So thank you. Our next position is secretary, and we currently have a secretary, and she's done amazing. And so I guess the first question is, would you like to remain secretary?
It's me, right?
Yes, Terry, you.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. As you can see, the duties are not extensive.
And we are grateful for every bit of anything you've put in there. So thank you. Would you
Yeah.
like to remain secretary, or would you like to, what would you like to do?
I'm fine with that. Yeah, I can remain secretary if everybody else is okay with that. But if somebody else would like to do it, that's fine as well.
It's Commissioner Morales. I'll nominate Terry Hyde as secretary.
Thank you.
I second that motion. It's Commissioner Romero. Hi, Terry.
Thank you, Lawrence. Okay, with that, Myrna, will you please call for a vote?
Lawrence Romero,
Yes.
Caroline Nunn,
Yes.
Michael Walton,
Yes,
Faustine Curry,
Yes.
Steve Johnston,
Yes.
Terry Hyde,
Yes.
Catherine Morales.
Yes.
All right, that motion passes 7-0.
Great. Thank you so much. Awesome, Terry. We appreciate it. And congratulations. Hey, Pam. Good to see you on here. Myrna, make sure you have Pam down. Okay, with that, we will move into our legislative regular agenda. Item D, consideration and possible action to approve the minutes from the May 27th, 2021 regular meeting of the Historic and Architectural Review Commission.
Commissioner Morales, I make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Thank you very
I
much. Do I have
second
a
that,
second?
Steve Johnston.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, Myrna, if you'll please call for a vote.
Lawrence Romero,
I abstain. I wasn't here.
Caroline Nunn,
I abstain. I wasn't here.
Michael Walton,
yes,
Faustine Curry,
Yes.
Steve Johnston,
Yes.
Terry Hyde,
Yes.
Catherine Morales.
Yes.
All right, that motion passes 5-0 with 2 commissioners abstaining.
Thank you, Myrna. Thank you all. Okay, with that, we will move on to item E, public hearing and possible action on a request for a certificate of appropriateness. Britton, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Britton Bostick, Downtown and Historic Planner. And the first request we have on the agenda tonight is a public hearing and possible action on a request for a certificate of appropriateness for an addition that creates a new or adds to an existing street-facing facade, a 3-foot 0-inch setback encroachment into the required 25-foot 0-inch street-facing garage setback for a carport to be constructed 22 feet 0 inches from the side or east property line, and a new fence, railing, or wall that is inconsistent with the overlay district's characteristics and applicable guidelines at the property located at 301 East 17th and a half Street, bearing the legal description 0.1798 acres, being the south part of Block 3 South Side Addition. And so to summarize that, the applicant is requesting a detached carport with a 3-foot setback modification and then also a 4-foot tall fence. So this is the property. This is a house constructed. The Historic Resource Survey, I believe, gets us an 1896 date, but it could have been constructed as early as 1891, according to deed records. So this one I had a little bit of a difficult time landing on an exact date. Sometimes it's easier for me to get close, but it looks like this was probably constructed at least right before the turn of the 20th century. Today it has asbestos siding, so it's covering up the original siding. A few of the features have been changed, but this is one of the older structures in this part of Old Town, certainly. It's located on one of our really unique, kind of what I call a peninsula in Old Town. So this is basically at the bottom of where Church Street and Elm Street meet at East 17th and a half Street. This is a section that had a little bit of street renaming back around 1916. And so we ended up with a 17th and a half Street after some renaming happened in this part of Old Town. This is a medium priority structure, and so most exterior additions or modifications go to you commissioners for review and or approval. And so this has a lot of different eras of home around it. This is one of the older in the area, but we also do see a high priority residence right next to it and a block over, a lot of medium and low priority structures also. And so again, this is kind of at the very end of where Church Street and Elm Street kind of meet, the termination of Elm Street on the south end. Because it is so far into Old Town, we don't really see this on our Sanborn maps, and it's hard to get a clear visual of it until 1916, but we can see the house there kind of at the very bottom edge of the map. And so the house looks to be very similar in footprint to what it was back then. It did have that side front porch that it has today. The map shows that at the time and then through the 1920s and into the 1940s, there looks like there was a little shed or maybe its own carport or garage off of Church Street. But when we go to the 1964 aerial, it looks like there was a carport structure kind of right behind the house with the driveway that went through from Church Street to Elm Street. And the current property owner has shared with me that the concrete drive that remains there today has metal poles that have been kind of cut off at the concrete level, showing where it looks like that carport once was. And we can see a little bit of an indication of that on the 1974 photo, although that's really blurry. I apologize. The first time I see this house in a photograph is in 1984. This is from the 1984 Historic Resource Survey. We did have a blurrier photo posted with this presentation in the agenda. I was able to get a better quality photo. Big thanks to Preservation Georgetown and in particular Liz Weaver for getting me some better quality photos of what I have been showing y'all. So you can see other than change to the color, not a lot of changes have occurred, especially to the front of the house in this time. And so what the applicant is wanting to do is construct a detached carport. It would not be attached to the house, but rather its own structure for a single carport, 22 feet deep and 10 feet wide, and it would be tucked behind the house. And behind the house in this case means on the north side of the house, and the driveway comes off of Elm Street rather than off of Church Street. It would have a gable roof. They have asked for wood columns, basically metal posts wrapped with wood for the columns, so it would have an appearance similar to the house. They have requested approval of either a corrugated metal or an asphalt shingle roof with a color to match the kind of brown toned asphalt shingles on the existing house. They've also asked for approval of a 4-foot tall decorative metal fence with brick posts at the corners and kind of at the openings in the fence. And so this fence has already been installed. It was approved by Harc several months ago for the property further up Elm Street. I think this is 1310 Elm Street. And so this came before Harc. The commissioners approved it. This house and the house that we're looking at on East 17th and a half Street, they're houses that were built in a very similar time period. Both houses were constructed in the 1890s. And so the fence is kind of an appropriate style for both houses, even though over time they've evolved a little bit differently. They're very different size structures, but interesting to see them be of that similar time period. And so here's a view of the front of the house. Right now there's a chain link fence. And so what they're proposing is to go ahead and fence the yard using that same fence that the neighbor has, but just come to their property line where they're able to around the front and then around the sides. And so I wanted to show a view of where the carport would be proposed to go. You can see we have a lot of landscaping that's kind of screening where that carport would be. So we see where the driveway is located and that entrance. So that would be the carport, essentially where you see those limbs that have been removed and kind of waiting to be disposed of. That's about where the carport would be. And so also showing some photos around the side of the house. There's an existing accessory structure kind of there on the back for storage and other purposes. And so this would also be detached. It would be approximately where the little yellow square is. And so what I wanted to show is this is the setback that they're proposing. Garages and carports have a 25-foot street setback. Often on properties in our Old Town Overlay District, we see garages and carports that are built closer to the street, especially if they're on a side street. So that's kind of the case here. The setback would be consistent, compatible with the surrounding properties on the same block in nearby blocks. And so when staff reviewed the application, we found in most cases it complied or partially complied with the applicable criteria. No signs are being proposed. And then getting into the criteria for approval of a setback modification, it generally complied. There were a few that was partially complies. There would be room to push the carport further back, but they're proposing to make use of the existing concrete driveway. And then partially complies. It's proposed to replace a structure that was not removed within the past year, but we do know it did exist at one point in time. We can see the evidence of that. And then no large trees or significant features are proposing to be retained. So that part did not apply to the request. We posted 3 signs on the property, 36 letters were mailed. Staff did receive 1 comment opposed. I think it's important to note here that the opposition expressed was to a chain link fence. And so we do have a lot of chain link in the Old Town Overlay District that is kind of coming with us from before we prohibited it. But chain link is now a prohibited material, so new fences are not able to be constructed of chain link in front and side yards like that. And so what they are proposing is the decorative metal and brick fence that you saw. So I just wanted to recap that comment if the commissioners hadn't had the opportunity to see it. And so given the approval criteria, what's being requested, what we know of the age of the property and some of the historic aspects of it, staff is recommending approval of the request for the carport addition, the setback modification, and the fence. And so commissioners, you have, as usual, 4 options, with your motion: to approve as presented, to deny as presented, to approve with conditions. If you do have any conditions for the approval, we would just ask you be clear about that in your motion so that we can capture it accurately. And then if you find a need to postpone, please let staff know what information you would like brought back to the next meeting. Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation, but I'm happy to answer questions. The applicant and property owner has joined staff in our planning office. They are available if you have questions. I don't believe they had a presentation for you, but they are here in the meeting.
Very good. Thank you, Britton. And thank you to the applicants for being here. Okay, with this, I'd like to open up for any questions or comments that the commissioners have.
Britton, can I get a clarification? This is Commissioner Morales. Is all the chain link being removed and the other fence, the new fence, being put in, or is it being just added to the front of the structure?
I'm gonna let the applicant answer that. So we have Cesar Acosta, our new long-range planner here in the meeting, kind of sitting with the applicant. And so Cesar, would you mind checking with them? I don't want to answer incorrectly for them.
Sure. Could you repeat the question one more time?
Is the new fence going to replace the chain link fence, or is the new fence only going to be in the front of the structure?
No, it's going to replace the chain link fence.
It's going to replace the chain link fence, ma'am.
Great, thank you. That was my only question.
Thank you, Commissioner Morales. Any
And
other?
run to the front.
Brendan, I had one question. This is Michael. I think you said the roof material was either or, two different
Yes.
materials, right?
So
Does it matter?
they've requested approval of either a corrugated metal roof or, glad I stopped on this picture, or an asphalt shingle to match the existing roof. So they were kind of willing to go with either. I think their preference is for the corrugated metal, but understood that the commissioners might want a match to the asphalt shingle of the house.
Yeah, I'm just curious if one or the other would change the assessment of compliance.
In this case, no, and the reason is we have a lot of detached carports that have developed over time in Old Town, and they have different roof types. And so in some cases, those are corrugated metal. In some cases, they're asphalt shingle. And so because the carport is kind of tucked back behind the house, and because there are several examples of what they've proposed in Old Town, even though it wouldn't match the house exactly, it would still be something that's consistent with the character of Old Town. And so for that reason, staff did not make a distinction in their recommendation for approval. The commissioners, however, are welcome to make that specific in the motion if the commissioners choose to approve the proposed project.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question. This is Commissioner Romero. The chain link fence, is the new fence going to replace within the same boundaries of that fence?
Yes, sir, could y'all answer that? So I think the question is the chain link fence itself what's going to be replaced, or will there be additional fencing across the front yard, kind of coming up to the front property line?
Yes, the fence will replace the existing and then come around to the front of the house.
So it's going to be a different, so it's not going to look the same.
That's correct. So rather than, so you see the chain link there now enclosing the backyard, the new fence would enclose the entire yard, including the front yard.
And Britain, that's already been taken into account, the easements and whatever setbacks need to be done.
Correct. And so this is kind of the first step in the process. So if they wanted to do a 3-foot tall fence, they could just go straight to a fence permit. They're requesting the 4-foot tall fence. We are seeing this occasionally. Sometimes people are wanting to put a swimming pool in or other feature that they need a 4-foot fence for safety. Sometimes the proportions of the fence are considered more pleasing with the 4-foot height than the 3-foot height. And so that's why the Elm Street fence that was approved was proposed at that height. And that's why the applicant is proposing this fence at that height. They still would have to go through a fence permitting process. And in that process, the building inspection staff check to make sure that any easements or first that the fence is going on the property and not in the city's right of way. And then also that if there are any public utility easements, drainage easements, or other kind of things in place that can't be crossed or have to be crossed with a gate, that's all accomplished. That's part of the technical review that has to be done during the fence permit. Y'all look at fences just to see if it's over 4 feet tall or it's less than 50% transparent. Y'all look to see if it's sufficiently compatible with the character of the historic district.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Lawrence. What other questions do we have?
Madam Chairman, I move for approval as presented.
Thank you, Steve. I sure appreciate it. Let me do a open for a public hearing, and then I'll come back to you. Does that sound good?
Oh, okay, sure.
Very good, thank you. Okay, at this time, I'd like to open for a public hearing. Do we have anyone that has said they would like to speak or address the commission?
I don't have anyone, and I don't see anyone in the chat either.
Very good, thank you, Myrna. Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing, and if there are any other questions from the commissioners, please speak up. I love conversation, and if there aren't, then Steve, I will turn it over to you for your motion.
If there are no questions or comments, Madam Chairman, I move for approval as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Okay, request a second.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Romero. Hey, is there any further discussion? All right, Myrna, will you please call for a vote?
Lawrence Romero,
Yes.
Carolee Nunn,
Yes.
Michael Walton,
Yes.
Faustine Curry,
Yes.
Steve Johnston,
Yes.
Terry Hyde,
Yes.
Catherine Morales.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes 7-0.
Very good. Thank you, Myrna, and thank you all, and thank you applicants for bringing it to Harc. We're excited for your project. Okay, with that, we will move to agenda item F, public hearing and possible action on a request for a certificate of appropriateness. Britton, I will turn it back over to you.
Madam Chair, Britton again. And so this is a public hearing and possible action on a request for a certificate of appropriateness for a 14-foot 0-inch setback encroachment into the required 25-foot 0-inch street-facing garage setback for a carport to be constructed 11 feet 0 inches from the front or west property line, a 6-foot 0-inch setback encroachment into the required 6-foot 0-inch side setback for the carport to be constructed 0 feet 0 inches from the side or south property line, and a 1-foot 0-inch setback encroachment into the 6-foot 0-inch side setback for an addition to be constructed 5 feet 0 inches from the side north property line at the property located at 1505 Pine Street, bearing the legal description Lot 7, Block 44 of the Snyder Edition. And so there are two pieces to this request, commissioners. This is a low priority structure. And so in a lot of cases, additions and alterations to low priority structures can be reviewed by staff. But in this case, there are some associated setback modifications. Staff cannot approve zoning modifications, but Harc does have that authority for residential properties in Old Town. And so that's why we're bringing this case to y'all this evening. This is the property. It's one that was built, I think, around the 1940s, mid-1940s. This was another one that was a little bit hard to get a date. It has had a lot of changes over time. And so I'll walk through some of that as well as what the applicant is proposing. This is just a block south of East 15th Street, and it's just to the northwest of San Jose Park for some kind of landmarks nearby. This is a low priority structure. As I said, it's surrounded by mostly low, but also some medium priority structures. This is a part of Old Town that developed a little bit later on in our history. And so for a long time, 15th Street was really a southern boundary of Georgetown. This was all agricultural land for a long time. We know that from some 1934 photos and from some of the Sanborn maps that we have. This structure, in fact, does not appear on any of our Sanborn maps because the maps did not cover this area and the structure was not constructed before 1940. So I don't have that kind of previous information to share for this property. The first time I'm able to see it is in the 1964 aerial. We can see it there as a fairly new structure along with some others. You can see that these blocks were not fully built out in 1964. And then by 1974, a few new structures, but still not completely built out like we are today. This is one where I got an assist from the internet. I was able to get a 2008 street view showing the property. So by this time, a front porch had been added on to the house. There are some additions there to the left side that crossed what had been the driveway. And then there was also a detached structure kind of up at the front right corner. It's a little bit difficult to see in this photo because the photo is blurry on the edge, but it's basically right behind that white truck and right behind the chain link fence that you see. In 2011, we can see that a little bit more clearly. You can see some additions to the side. You can see that detached structure, which looks like it may have been a carport or storage area, the chain link fence around the property at the time, and then this front porch. It looks like the exterior materials had been changed for the limestone and brick. The windows had been replaced. The roof material had probably been redone. So a lot of the historic fabric for this property is no longer there, even though this is not quite as old of a structure as we often see. And then here's the property by 2019. And so a lot of similar things in place by this point. That detached carport or other structure, whether for storage or for other reasons, had been removed. And so you can still see, though, that there were some additions crossing that driveway that had been constructed. These are current photos. And so there was a driveway that at one point in time went past the house. That's pretty typical of development patterns from the 1940s, 1950s. Even before that, we started to get more garages, street-facing garages in the 1950s and 60s. And so it looks like there was a driveway there. May or may not have been a carport attached to the side that may or may not have disappeared. So some of what I'm saying is a little bit conjectural, but it looks like at some point in time, some additions were added that may not have been code compliant or kind of made to last. And so those are non-historic additions. They have been removed, which is how you can see the clear view. And then the porch is, the porch had not had a lot of kind of structural pieces. And so those are being kind of reinforced with new structure to hold up that porch, new beams, new columns, which are a little bit heftier to hold up that roof. Where you're seeing the dumpster located is approximately where the carport is proposed to be. There has been an adjustment to what the applicant is asking for or a clarification of what they would like to do. I'll walk through that a little bit, but just generally imagine the proposed carport to be fairly close to where that dumpster is, just scooted over a little bit to the left, closer to the house. And so the applicant had provided proposed site plans showing the existing residence. You can see there's a little one-story building to the back that may have been a garage or carport previously. And then wanting to, if you look at the drawing on the right, they're wanting to add on to the house on the left side or the north side. And rather than a 6-foot setback, they're requesting Harc approval of a 5-foot setback. So that would be 1 foot closer to the property line than our zoning code generally permits for residential single family. And then they showed a 1-story carport on top of the existing concrete pad that had been previously poured for that structure that has since been removed. And so that was what was presented for floor plans. We can see on the left is the existing house now. On the right is the house that's being proposed. So there will be additions generally to the left and to the rear. These are oriented, kind of turned to the side. And so I've pointed out Pine Street would be on the left side. The front door is on the left side of this drawing. So the additions you're seeing at the top of the drawing and to the right of the drawing, that's the additions kind of to the left and to the rear. So I apologize for the change in orientation, but that was the clearest way to make the drawings. So when additions are proposed completely to the rear that don't impact the front facade, those do not require a certificate of appropriateness if they meet the zoning requirements. And so the addition that is visible from the street, because this is low priority, is able to be reviewed by staff. But any zoning modifications, like a setback modification, would require to be approved by Harc before it can be fully approved. And so as we go to the elevations, the applicant is showing what the house originally has that drawn up with the stone facade, the bricks surrounding the windows, and then showing the addition that they're proposing on that left side. So that addition would be with a fiber cement siding rather than with additional stone or brick, using that same asphalt shingle roof. And that's the part that would be 5 feet from the property line rather than the 6 feet from the property line. Showing what some of the proposed materials are. And for the most part, this is at the staff review level, but wanted to make sure the commissioners had the opportunity to see this project. And then also the applicant has provided photos from the existing conditions, showing the left and rear on the top right of the slide, and then showing an example of a carport constructed to the front on a property within that neighborhood. And so here's kind of a contextual analysis similar to what I did in the last presentation, showing generally where the setbacks are along the street. And so that carport would be a little bit further forward than other structures along the street. This is a mix of age of structure. And so there are structures that have street facing garages that are newer, not historic structures. There are structures that have additions of carports, places to park for covered parking, but generally they keep a fairly consistent street setback line. And so the porch that was added on at some point in time encroaches a bit into that general setback for the street, and then this would encroach a little bit further than that. And so when staff reviewed that application, we found that it complied or partially complied with the applicable approval criteria. No signs are being proposed, so that was not applicable. And then in reviewing the setback criteria, we found generally that the proposal partially complied. And a lot of that had to do more with the setback for the proposed carport in the front than it did for the addition to the side. So remember, commissioners, 3 setback modifications are being requested. Setbacks for the sides and then setback for the front for the carport. And so staff's recommendation is kind of separate for those 2 different pieces of the project. 1 sign was posted on the property and 37 letters were mailed. Staff has received 1 comment opposed, and that was received today. So Madam Chair, if you would like me to read that letter, if the commissioners didn't have the opportunity to read it when that was sent to them, please let me know. But I want to specify that the comment in opposition was specific to the setback modification for the carport from someone representing the property directly to the right or to the south of this property had expressed concerns about the carport being located right against the property line that was shared between those 2 properties. And so in reviewing the site context, the development pattern for the block, and then also kind of the history of that area and kind of looking at general consistency, the approval criteria. Staff is recommending approval of the requested 1 foot 0 inch side setback modification. So that would be for the addition of the living space on the left side of the house or the north side of the house. And then staff is recommending denial of the setbacks for the carport. Those would be the 14 foot and 6 foot setbacks. And so since then, the applicant has provided to staff, and will probably want to speak to it in this meeting, they have wanted to clarify where they would like to have that carport located. It would be set a little bit further back toward the house and further off of that shared property line. So rather than the 6 foot setback, I think we're looking at more like a 9 inch setback. And then rather than the 14 foot setback, I think it would be closer to an 11 foot setback. I've not had an opportunity to fully review the drawings. And so staff hasn't done an evaluation of what's being proposed as a modification, but I am happy to share that information. And also I think the applicant would like to share that with you when it's time for them to make comments. And so as usual, you've got 4 options as you make your motion. And then that concludes my presentation, but I'm available for questions, and the applicant has also joined our meeting. So I'm sure they'll have something to share as well.
Thank you, Britton. If you would, since we received the letter opposed at some point today, would you mind reading that just so we're all on the same page about that?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
So staff received a public comment today, and this is from Allison Mangum, and she has an address at 1507 South Pine Street. She checked the box that says, I object. And then her comment specifically was, I do not feel this structure, in parentheses, a carport, is in character with the history of the Old Town area. I also object to any structure being built anywhere close to the property line of the house at 1507. The building lines should be adhered to. As we work to restore the area, I believe that it is imperative that we remain vigilant regarding the standards of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Britton. Okay, applicants. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to you guys if you have things you'd like to share with us about your project.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And good evening to the entire commission. My name is Leonard Wallace. This is my daughter, Victoria. And we started the project, and we did submit some new information to Britton today. She had requested the information a couple weeks back when we were out of town, and I did it by memory. So that was my fault, and I take responsibility for that. We went out and we measured today to make sure that we were trying to be as close as within the guidelines as we possibly could for the Harc committee to review. And we're about 5 feet 3 inches off of the property line now instead of the proposed 6. We can make the adjustment and go down to 6 feet off the property line should the committee require us to do so. But we are hoping that you would allow us, because we want to go right off the existing corner of the right side of the home.
On the west.
On the west side where it was parallel to the house. And that would be 5 feet 3 inches opposed to 6 feet off of what is presently now.
And then from the
from the street, we measured, we were 24 feet back to the front of the carport. And the carport will actually be attached to the home itself on both sides. So we're moving it over, and it doesn't show that in the drawing itself. When the architect put it together, they didn't attach it, but it is attached to the actual home itself. So that's where we're picking up the additional footage from.
And similar to how other houses are in the area or even just across the street, the carport would be almost parallel with the front of the porch with a 1 foot overhang. So it would be an 18-foot carport from the rear to the front.
All right, 17 foot with the 1 inch overhang, 1 foot overhang, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it would be a 17-foot garage with, thank you, Britton, with the 1 inch with a 12-inch overhang. So if you look right here, it'll be, oh, you can't see it, sorry. It'd be a 1 foot overhang off the present porch that's existing now.
Okay. Thank you both so much for sharing that with us. And I'm sure we will have some questions, but before we move into that, Britton, what is our protocol as a commission when you receive new materials? Is that something that you typically want to review and then come back to us? What's the protocol on that from a staff perspective?
From our perspective, it's to follow the direction of the commission. And so I have pulled up the drawing that the applicant sent this afternoon so that y'all have the opportunity to see it on the screen. And so a couple of things that we can do, y'all can consider this in this meeting and y'all can make a decision based on this new information if you feel it's adequate for y'all to make the decision that you choose to. One of the options that you do have as you make a motion is to postpone. And so you do have the opportunity also to postpone either for further consideration, or if you would like staff or the applicant to provide any additional information for the next meeting or the meeting to which you postpone this item, we can certainly do that. We do post the application items with the agenda packets. And so if the commissioners would need more time to review and consider what's being proposed, the new information could be added to the next agenda packet for y'all to review, similar to what you have. We can talk through some of what they're proposing. I'm happy to support that discussion, but please know that if y'all do want to make a decision tonight and move forward on a decision with this, staff is here to support y'all being able to do that.
Very good. Thank you for the clarification, Britton, and for the extra information. Okay, with that, I will open it up to the commissioners to ask questions of staff or the applicant that you all may have.
It's Catherine, and I would like to ask Britton if it's possible for you, while looking at the diagram that is on the screen, to explain how many modifications are still left, and has this erased any of the not complies or
Great question.
partially
Thank you.
complies?
So are y'all ready to do some math with me? Let's talk through what's being proposed. And so if you'll look at the drawing on the screen, if y'all are able to do that, they're showing in the blue pen where they would like to place the carport. So what you had seen in the prior drawing is in the bottom right corner of the site, there's kind of a dotted rectangle area. That's where an existing concrete pad is. That is approximately where that previous structure was. So that is right up against the property line, and that's why the carport would have, that you saw in the presentation, would have been right up on that property line. Now, if they put it where you're looking at, they're showing that it would be 5 feet 3 inches from that side property line. So rather than requiring a 6 foot 0 inch side setback, modification for a 0 foot 0 inch setback effectively, they're saying they would move it 5 feet 3 inches off the property line and leave 5 feet 3 inches between the carport and the edge of the property. So that would require, rather than a 6 foot setback modification, a 9 inch setback modification. So that very much reduces the amount of modification being requested for that side setback. What they're also showing, and this is where you're going to do a little bit of math with me, the 24-foot setback from the street, that gives you a good sense of where the carport would be located relative to the street curb. Street curbs don't necessarily represent the location of property lines. In fact, they're often set back from that. And y'all have seen this before in a few different examples. In Old Town, sometimes the property lines are closer to the curb and sometimes they're much further back. So I don't have a dimension showing the distance between the curb and the property line, but we can see that it would be set back 24 feet from the curb. And so it would only protrude about 1 foot in front of that existing front porch. So it being located closer to the house, it would be more in line with the existing structures. It would still be a little bit closer to the street than some of the surrounding structures, but generally not much more. I'm looking at a dimension on this survey that shows 23.8 feet. And I believe that that 23.8 feet is the distance between the front property line along Pine Street and the beginning of the main part of the house, excluding that front porch. And so I don't believe, because there's an X and then kind of a speckled area where the front porch is, I believe that's indicating that it's an open area with a concrete floor, not counting it as part of that main structure, which has a dimension for all of the exterior walls on that survey. So if you add the 23.8 feet and the 12.0 feet together, you essentially get what I believe is the distance between the front property line and that nook or that L shape where the house makes an L and you see that side part of the house sticking out to the right. Is everybody kind of following me so far with what I'm talking through? If you're not, let me know. So if you add those together, we're at 35 feet, 35.8 feet. And so I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Well, 35 feet, 8 inches, except they're doing this as decimal feet. So it's a little bit different. But essentially that, very close to that. So if that L of the house is set back 35.8 feet from the front property line, you see they're giving a dimension that there would be 2 feet of separation between the house and the carport. And then the carport would be 18 feet in length. And so if we kind of take that whole length that we had, the 35.8 feet, and we subtract the 2 feet and then the 18 feet or 20 feet, you end up with the front of that carport being what I believe to be 15.8 feet from the property line. In that case, it would require a 9. 2-foot setback modification because there's a required 25-foot setback. And so rather than a 14-foot setback modification, it would reduce down to 9.2 feet. I would probably recommend rounding that to an even 9 feet, honestly, commissioners, just to give that an even number and to give the applicant a little bit of space just for correct measurements. So you would go from a 6-foot side setback modification to a 9-inch side setback modification. And then you would go from a 14-foot front setback modification to a approximately 9-foot setback modification. Commissioners, y'all are welcome to be very specific in that decimal, but you can also make an adjustment to that. So it would be more compliant in that case. It would come off the side property line more, be very close to the 6 feet that would normally be. So it would be closer to compliance than what had initially been presented by staff. And kind of working through that, I hope that helps share information about what's being proposed. But happy to answer questions, commissioners, and thank you so much for that.
Excuse me, Britton.
Britton.
Excuse me, Britton. I thought I just heard you say 9 foot on the side, or was that a 5.3 foot on the side?
So on the side, if it were going to be 5 feet 3 inches from the side, it would still need a 9-inch setback modification because the required setback 6 feet.
Okay.
But then the front would still need, I believe, a 9-foot setback modification. So 9 inches and 9 feet, all nines.
Okay. Okay. I got it.
Britton, are you saying that it has to be 33 feet off the front? That's 24 plus 9 is 33 feet.
The 24 feet is just what the applicant has measured from the curb. From the property line, it would be, I believe, about 15.8 feet.
I got you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's where their measurement is being made. I get it. And these kinds of adjustments are made a lot in Old Town, aren't they?
We do have a lot of requests for setback modifications. This is something that the commissioners see a lot. Sometimes we have it for carports and garages for vehicles. There is either not sufficient room on the site to allow it to be constructed elsewhere, or it's facing a side street and there may not be enough room, or we're trying to make other design features work. In this case, there would be an option to kind of lay out kind of hopefully what's a full picture of the design. There would be an option to kind of leave that side driveway and provide parking options that would be either down the side or toward the rear of the structure. It looks like that might have been historically how the property was designed or oriented. For the applicant to be able to provide that additional living space, I believe they're wanting to go from a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom to a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home. In order for them to be able to complete their intended design, they would need to add on to the left and the rear of the house. That would not leave a lot of room for parking. And so we do have a lot of requests for covered parking. We've had some hailstorms recently, and so it is a fairly popular request. But in this part of Old Town in particular, we see a lot of instances in which houses are built a bit closer to the street than we see them in kind of the older parts of town. Victorian homes are often, but not always, set much further back. These 1940s, 1950s, 1960s houses are sometimes set closer to the street. And by the time we get into 2021, sometimes the site design options are a little bit limited. And so there were some additions that have been removed, non-historic additions that were not in a good condition from what staff could tell. And so they're essentially looking to put back permitted additions that have design approval in a similar location, but to kind of fix or kind of elevate the front facade of the property.
Okay.
I have a question. This is Terry Hyde. What is the setback for between the fence and the proposed carport? So, I mean, did you say earlier that You know, the area, the speckled area is where there once was a carport.
It looks like that
That's
was either,
probably-
and I'll go back to my presentation if that's all right, because that might help. Wow. It keeps sending me back to the
Oh,
start.
there it is. Is that the storage kind of
So
the
it
little shed
looks
roof
like
thing?
there could have been a vehicle parked there. Right now it looks like there were some things stored. There was a gate there so one could move vehicles in and out. And so at one
Okay.
point in time, it looks like there was a carport or shed located where that pad is. So the carport that they're proposing today, what they've come to y'all in this meeting with, if you took that and scooted it closer to the
that.
house, kind
Yeah.
of leaving that front yard space intact, it would
Uh-huh.
still have the driveway. They would want the driveway to connect and be under that carport, but it would essentially shift up into that little nook that's created
Yeah.
by the L shape in the house.
Okay, and then it would scoot in so they wouldn't need the full 6-foot setback.
Correct.
They would only, okay,
That would
and-
reduce to a 9-inch setback
to a 9-inch,
modification.
okay. Just out of curiosity, is there room to move around it now? It looks like in the plan, it's like 2 feet off the house or something. Or do you not need to? Because it's, I mean, some carports are, you know, physically attached.
Applicant, maybe you guys
Oh.
can answer that.
Hi.
Well, I was asking, yeah, for the thing to come back up, like,
Okay, yes, absolutely. A good question. Yeah, it would actually be attached to the house and we'll move it back all the way to attach to the rear of the house. However, the carport itself will not, or the concrete pad will be 2 feet from the house, but the actual roof of the house will be attached to the existing house.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I have one more question for the applicant. Will that pad go away? Will that be grass? And on the other side, will that concrete pad also, will that go away also? Will that be grass?
On the right side.
On the right side or the west side of the house, the concrete pad will go away and there'll be grass. It'll be more of a dry scape on the front though.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you all. If we don't have any other questions at this moment, then I will open the discussion open for a public hearing. Myrna, do we have anyone that would like to speak or that has signed up to comment, anything like that in the hearing?
Yeah, Faustine, this is Michael. I actually had a question which may have just been answered. I apologize. I had to step away just for a second.
Michael, if it's all right, do you mind if we come back after the public hearing or?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No, I don't have anyone that signed up to speak.
Very good. Thank you, Myrna. Okay, we'll close the public hearing now. And then any additional questions or comments by the commissioners? So Michael, I'll send it back to you. Thank you for understanding.
Sure, and I apologize for repeating if I am. Britton, if you could switch back to the hand-drawn thing. There was a comment made by the applicant at the beginning, and I think it was just repeated, that the carport itself would be attached to the house. Is that correct?
Oh, really?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so Britton, they would gain 2 feet or lose 2 feet, depending on what your perspective is, based on what's in this drawing. So if they push it back 2 feet, then the setback would be then 2 feet even shorter. Is that correct?
So
I think that was for the pad. Sorry.
that's where I've not quite had time to fully review this. so I can answer questions to the best that I can. The applicant can also answer questions, but staff has not included this as part of their formal review for the commissioners.
Okay, and then I think Commissioner Hyde was asking this, and again, I'm sorry for repeating. The house itself, looking at this diagram, that wall, that would be to the south, I believe. Or, well, it says 10 or 16.2 directly above there. It's to the property line right near where it says west 120 feet. Does that make sense, Britton, what I'm pointing at?
So the, I think so. So are
This will
you
work. Tell me if this works.
on the back right, what I'm gonna call the back right corner of the drawing? Oh, look at that.
Yeah, so right here, this distance here, do we know what that is?
So the survey is showing that to be 2.5 feet.
2.5?
Yes.
Oh, okay, 2.6 right there. Is that what that refers to?
According to what I'm accustomed to seeing on surveys, yes.
Okay, so then the carport would actually be, based on what I'm seeing here, like 2 point something further in this way. So if this distance here is 2.6 feet, this distance can't be 5.3 feet unless it's further, you know, in this direction.
That is what it looks like.
I'm sorry. We did the measurements today, and it is 5.3. I think when they did the layout of the actual survey, they may have just put the house a little cockeyed, it's not 100% parallel.
Yeah, okay.
Because the path goes, the sidewalk goes from front to back.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. What other questions do we have either for Britton or for the applicant? Okay, with that, I'd like to request a motion.
This is Carol Lee. I make a motion that we approve the carport with the owner modified setbacks.
Thank you.
I'll
Terry.
second that. This is Terry Hyde. I'll second.
Thank you, Terry. Britton, is that motion sufficient for what you need?
I would ask for a little bit of detail because when I write the certificate of appropriateness approval memo, what I do is write the specific dimension of the setback that's approved. So I just want to check and make sure I understand the intent of the commissioners. So this would be for a 9-inch setback modification on the south or right side to allow that carport to be 5 feet 3 inches from the side property line.
Yes.
And then what looks like, I think it would be probably good to do the rounded number 9 to give just a couple of inches of flexibility. And so that would be a 9-foot modification to the front or west setback to allow the carport to be 14 feet from the west property line, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Carolee. Thank you, Britton and Terry. Okay, do we have any further discussion?
Yes.
Michael?
I understand delays and costs and everything, but my instinct is telling me that we should ask for an official drawing from the architect. I think the applicant mentioned they have one that has the accurate depiction. I'm not saying that this is wrong, but I just think for the record and for future reference, it would be good to have that. I'm in favor of the project, but I think we need to have an updated, accurate drawing that shows the actual dimensions.
won't they, may I ask, won't they have to do that in order to get their permits?
That is correct. So the next step would be to complete the building permit process. There's a permitting process as well as an inspection process. And so any new structures that require a foundation have to have an engineered foundation. They have to show those locations. They're required to provide a property survey showing existing conditions. There's a second step in the process during kind of the construction. They do what's called a form survey. So anywhere a foundation is going to be poured, and that includes foundations for houses, additions to houses, carports, etc. There's a survey done called a form survey. And that form survey looks a little bit like this, but it captures the dimension of the foundation forms from the property lines to ensure the setback requirements are met. And so if the applicant's requests were approved, when I write that memo, I write in the specific dimension of the setback modification. That letter goes with the building permit application so that our building inspection staff can see what has been approved by the commission. And then they use that in their review of the building permit. And they also use that when they're kind of checking through the process. So that is correct. There is additional process that will be occurring after this approval. And so that is one of the reasons I suggested a little bit of flexibility in that front setback to make sure that it's a dimension that I guess is kind of feasible on the ground. Because that was measured from the curb, I'm asking for that a little bit differently than I am from the measurement on the side setback, which is much more specific to the property line.
Okay.
Michael,
Thank you, Carolee, for asking that question.
Michael, is that sufficient with what you're thinking,
Yeah.
or would you like to make an addition to the motion?
No, it's good. Like I said, it's really just about the record and making sure it's documented. And if that has to be done, then we don't need to stop.
Very good. Thank you for bringing that up. And thank you, Britton and Carolee. Okay, so we have a motion, a second, and now, Myrna, will you please take a roll?
Lawrence Romero,
Yes. Yes.
thank you. Carolee Nunn,
Yes.
Michael Walton,
Yes.
Faustine Curry,
Yes.
Steve Johnston, Terry Hyde,
Approve.
Catherine Morales,
Yes.
and Steve Johnston.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Myrna. And thank you all for the discussion, and applicants, thank you for bringing your project to Harc.
Thank you very much. We
Thank you,
appreciate
Commissioner.
your
We
time.
certainly appreciate your time.
Definitely. Good luck with the rest of your project.
Have a great evening.
Okay, with that, we'll move to item G, staff presentation and discussion of the procedure to make a recommendation to the City Council on proposed changes to the design guidelines. Britton, I know you have been waiting to show these to the City Council for a while, and so I'll turn it over to you to share what's happening right now.
Thank you so much, Britton again. And so we had a little bit of a scheduling hiccup in being able to present the design guidelines update to City Council in their workshop. Workshops do have a limited time frame. We were scheduled at the end, and the discussion on other items went long enough that we needed to reschedule. So we will be presenting this to Council in their workshop on June 22nd. Y'all are scheduled to review, consider, and make a recommendation to Council on their proposed changes in your next meeting on June 24th. And so before we get to that meeting, I wanted to take an opportunity to go through what that procedure looks like really quickly so that y'all can be familiar. Y'all don't often make recommendations to Council. So the last time there was a recommendation to Council, it was on a zoning map amendment that would have moved a property from the Old Town overlay to the downtown overlay. This is not a zoning map amendment. It works similarly, but it is just a little bit different. And so I wanted to go through what that looks like We've got Ethan Harwell, our senior planner, in the meeting tonight. Ethan is really familiar with the procedural kind of parts of having a board or commission make a recommendation on policy to the city council. So not only am I available to answer questions, but Ethan, our senior planner, is available to y'all as well. And he has a lot of experience with this, with UDC amendments that are brought before council, but first they go to the UDC committee for review and then a recommendation. And so that's what we'll do. We'll talk through what the next dates are, what the adoption process looks like, and then give y'all the opportunity for any question and discussion. This isn't the only time that y'all will be able to ask questions. I just wanted to make sure that you had some preparation and had some time to think about that and consider it before we come to our next meeting. There are not any cases scheduled for your next meeting. That will be devoted to design guidelines, review and recommendation only. And so June 14th, this coming Monday, the consultant is going to send us the final draft. They've captured comments. Y'all made comments, staff made comments. The community has sent us some comments, shared their concerns, their thoughts. So we've tried to wrap that all up into a final draft. And then we'll present that to the city council in their workshop on June 22nd. Then on June 24th is going to be y'all's meeting where we'll have this on the agenda. Lucky you, it'll be the only thing on the agenda that night. There, in terms of things to discuss and make a decision on or debate, there won't be any COA cases. Those will come back to y'all in July. And then the city council will hold a public hearing and first reading of the ordinance to amend the design guidelines. Y'all don't consider the ordinance itself. You do consider the design guidelines document, but council has a separate document that has all the whereas official language. It's the official amending document. And so we'll read the caption for that. That'll be in their agenda for review. Our legal team will review that, and then they'll do a second reading and of that ordinance and kind of a second consideration before they make a decision. So y'all get one meeting, council has two meetings. Our city charter says that we have to read it out loud twice and council has to consider it twice before they can adopt that change. And so because y'all are tasked with, or the power is delegated to you to work on design guidelines on behalf of the council, we've been doing all this work for the last several months on the design guidelines, working on updating those, what good updates look like. Our consultant provided a draft. We went through that, kind of shared those changes. So we're going to change the number of chapters. We're going from 14 chapters down to 5. We're adding some content for residential infill that we don't currently have. We're talking about materials and sign illumination styles, lots of different things that we don't necessarily have covered or that we wanted to be more specific on. The chapter rearrangement is the big one. We're also providing some additional content in terms of showing what architectural styles we have in Georgetown so that those are easier to identify, etc. So we've gone through all that process, and then y'all will review the final draft. We will get that to y'all as fast as we can after we get it from the consultant so that you'll have time to look at it before your next meeting. You'll hold a public hearing. So we will have the opportunity for the public to speak on these design guidelines, whether they're for or against or neutral. That'll be a public hearing. The notice was posted in the newspaper for that. And so rather than post signs on property, we're covering a large amount of property. So notice gets published in the Williamson County Sun. And then you'll make a recommendation. So where you often see at the very end of a certificate of appropriateness, you'll have a motion to approve, a motion to deny, a motion to approve with conditions. In this case, you would have kind of a motion to amend. I'll get into that in a second, or a motion to postpone, meaning you need additional information or time to consider before you make a decision. So after y'all make a recommendation, you have to make a recommendation first. After that, it goes to council and they consider it. They'll also hold a public hearing, so another opportunity for the public to provide comment. They can provide comment in writing, they can provide comment in person, and then they'll have a first reading. We read the caption out loud. It's kind of an official process thing. Hopefully I get to read it out loud. That'd be great fun. And then in the following meeting, they would have a second reading. You have to read the caption out loud again. That usually doesn't get a public hearing, but the public would have the opportunity to speak in the second. reading if they would like, and then council will vote on the item, whether to approve. They could make some amendments before they approve. So 3 public meetings and 2 public hearings during the adoption process. So it takes about a month and a half. So y'all are to assist the city council in formulating design guidelines and other supplemental materials relevant to historic preservation. And then the notice was posted in the Sun on June 6th. So we've completed that process. And then very similar to what y'all have seen, you'll have a motion to approve as proposed, to disapprove as proposed. You'll have another option, which is a little bit different, similar, but a little bit different from your COAs. You'll have a motion to approve with amendments. And so when we have that final draft, we've gone back and forth with the consultant a few times now to make changes. What we would be doing in this next meeting is, if you are good with what's being proposed, the document in front of you, then you would make a motion to approve the document as it is. If you want to make any amendments to it, rather than share that with the consultant and send it back for them to change and then come back again, we would actually amend it there in the meeting. And so I'm going to make this up, but if you wanted to, for example, say that the color blue is no longer allowed for commercial structures in the downtown overlay, you would make a motion to approve with the amendment that the color blue is no longer allowed for commercial structures in the downtown overlay. We would capture any amendments that y'all would want to make as kind of a separate memo. We would get those all listed out, and then you would vote. And if you said we vote to approve with these amendments, then we would share with council what your proposed amendments are, so that they can see what is the final draft, and then what are Harc's proposed amendments to that draft. And so rather than continuing back and forth, that's how you would make any changes to it. So when you review it, know that you'll still have the opportunity to make changes and adjustments. Let's say that we had members of the public attend the meeting, and a member of the public said, you know, Harc, during the public hearing, and I said, you know, we would really like to require that only metal roofs are allowed in Old Town from here on out. We don't really dialogue during public comment with the commenters, but you can take that information into consideration in your decision. And so if you heard that comment and you said, well, we think that would be very great, staff, we want to make that amendment. So you would make a motion to approve with the amendment that only metal roofs are now allowed in Old Town. We would capture that. We would bring that forward to the city council with the final draft for them to consider. Council can also make their own amendments during their process. So they can consider your amendments, they can make their own amendments, or if y'all choose to not make any amendments, that's also fine. You're not required to, but that's the kind of the process or procedure you would use. And then if it comes to y'all and you say, this is just not something that we can approve, this is not approvable, you can make a motion to disapprove or recommend disapproval. Now it'll still go forward to council, and then council will still make a decision, but your recommendation would be, council, we don't think that you should approve these. In that case, it'd probably be good to capture why. And then if you need to postpone, let's say, you know, hey, we're not ready, or somebody has brought this issue to my attention, we want time to think about this and debate, then you would make a motion to postpone the decision on a recommendation to a later meeting. And so that's kind of what your options look like for that. So if it seems a little bit intimidating to make those amendments in the meeting, just know that staff is here to support that process for y'all. And so we can help you capture your intent there. I'm pretty well versed in the design guidelines at this point and the proposed updates. And so y'all will have a couple of weeks, the public will have a couple of weeks to look at that before you meet, or about a week and a half, excuse me. So if you have, if you want to discuss that with staff in the next couple of weeks, if you want to go over those changes with us, please let me know. We are available to y'all for that. We can either meet on the phone, we can meet virtually, or you're welcome to visit us at our office and we'll meet with you in person and go over what that looks like. But because this is something that y'all don't do very often, and some of the commissioners may not have had the opportunity to go through that process yet, I wanted to make sure y'all were aware of what that's going to look like and what that process is. Well, we can go over that again in the next meeting, and I will be giving a presentation going over the changes to the design guidelines. Y'all will have plenty of time for discussion on that. so that we can get your questions answered and y'all can feel assured about the decision that you want to make. So that concludes my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And like I said, Ethan is also available for procedural questions. He's quite good at this.
Thank you, Britton. I'm sure we're all going to have questions, especially as we go through it, through the actual process. So commissioners, what questions do you have for Britton? Any thoughts, ideas, as we're moving into that more formal part of the design guideline review from us? I'm sure that Faustina is screaming in the background. That's just gotten you guys sidetracked.
Britton, I will definitely have to meet with you for what is it? For my special reading on it, because I did start reviewing it, but that's a lot to review.
It is a long document, and so please, like I said, please know staff is here. I'm happy to meet with everybody if I need to, and so please know that my next couple of weeks are open to y'all. We want to make sure that you have the information you need. So Commissioner Romero, I'm looking forward to meeting with you and going over all of that and getting you caught up. And like I said, our consultant should have the final draft to us on Monday, so we'll get that out as quickly as possible. And so if we'll send that out via email, but if you would like a hard copy from us, please just let me know. We can get a hard copy to you as well.
Britton, you know I'm going to ask you this. What format will the comments be in this time? Will they be a PDF, and will we be able to comment on it directly?
You can comment on it directly. So the way that we're going to carry it forward to council is we would have the document that Post Oak has prepared. And so that'll be a PDF document, which we can print. The way that we want to capture your comments this time is in a separate document, because we're going to list out the amendment. So rather than amend in the document, I would have a list out. So let's say you had changes to pages page 4, page 17, and page 249. I would list out, and all the commissioners said, yes, we want to make those amendments. We would say the amendments would include on page 4, here's what that amendment would be. You know, on page 17, here's what that amendment would be. And that way council can see the document and they can see kind of a list of the proposed amendments to it. Does that make sense? So rather than commenting on the PDF document, we would have a separate document to capture all of those comments so that you could kind of go through the list of amendments and then look back at the document and see what would be amended. When we get this thing all finished and every council has made their adoption decision, any of those changes will be captured in the final version. So any amendments will go to our consultant, they'll make those changes, and then they'll give us back the final official copy. It's not official and final until the city council makes a decision on the document and or any amendments to it. Amendments can be everything from remove this chapter to edit this sentence. So there's kind of a broad range of amendments that are available to y'all.
So are you going to provide us with a document or some sort of form that you want us to put our feedback into so that you have an automated way to receive it?
I can do that. That's not something that I had planned on, but that's one of the reasons that we're meeting on this evening, is so that I can be prepared to support y'all. So if it would be helpful for me to set up kind of a commenting template, I am happy to do that. It would probably look like a table format that you could write your comments into, and it would look something like, on this page, I want to change this sentence. On this page, I want to, you know, whatever that change might be.
Right. I'm just trying to make it as easy for both you and us to capture any comments anybody has in an automated way, so that we're not talking about pencil and paper and whatever. So
Ethan,
you come up with.
Ethan has a comment to that, and this is why I brought him in. He's very experienced.
When I work with the UDC advisory committee, oftentimes what we do, especially in the virtual setting, it works really well, is we will just ask all of our committee members to come with their comments, and they'll come with page numbers, and they will find all of my typos and things that need to be changed. or things that aren't quite maybe what we talked about at the last meeting that they have concerns with. And we will share screen, and we will keep just a running tab on the discussion. So typically we have a column for what the comments were and what follow-up is needed or what change is needed. So that as we talk and put those amendments out there, everyone is able to see what's happening at the same time. And you can see it written down, and you can take down very specific notes. We find that to be really helpful.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ethan. Britton is probably cringing because she knows how many comments I provided on the first go round, and I'm hoping they were all corrected so that there's nothing left to do.
You didn't have nearly as many comments as I did, so.
Oh, okay, good. I'm glad.
We're hoping.
Thank you both.
We don't want typos, and so I think that is a good idea. So if it's helpful for me to send out a template for you to organize your thoughts or your comments, I am happy to do that. I think Ethan had a good point. We have the opportunity to capture that on a screen that y'all are seeing so that you can see kind of in real time. We have a really excellent planning staff when we kind of circle everybody up and rely on that expertise. And so we'll have staff available in that meeting, even though it's going to be virtual. That may end up being a little bit easier because we can have somebody capturing what y'all would like to see changed as we go through. Everybody can kind of see and discuss that, and then y'all can make a decision as a group on what your recommendation would be.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. I had a lot of comments. Rest assured, Britton had lots and lots of comments on that. I'm looking forward to getting the final draft.
Okay, thank you all. Any other questions that we have about this before we move forward? All right, we'll move to item on the agenda H. Any updates, commissioner questions or comments? Sophia is not on the call, but staff or commissioners, anything else you'd like to mention?
So we just had that next meeting on June 24th will be dedicated to this design guidelines update. Y'all will not have any certificates of appropriateness. And then remember, we will be returning to in-person meetings starting in July. So y'all will be back in City Council chambers on July 8th. We're looking forward to that. If you have any concerns or have questions about that, please feel free to contact Myrna. We'd be glad to work with you, answer any questions. But in the July meetings, it'll be 6 p.m. at City Council chambers rather than via the Zoom meeting. And one of the expectations is that we will, at a minimum, have a quorum of the Harc members in person at City Council chambers. There will still be an opportunity for Zoom participation, but we will need to have a Harc quorum. So when Myrna is sending out the meeting agenda link and the meeting notice, please know that ensuring we have an in-person quorum is something that staff will be looking for so that we can begin this transition back to in-person meetings.
Very good. Thank you, Britton. All right. Awesome meeting tonight, guys. Such good discussion and questions. Thank you all so much for everything that you comment and add to these meetings. You make them great. So thank you. Okay, with that, I would like to ask for a motion and a second to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second Morales.
Second by Catherine. Thank you. Myrna, if you'll call for a vote, and then we'll call it a night.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner Nunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Walton?
Yes.
Chair Curry?
Wow, that's so official. Yes.
Commissioner Johnston? Commissioner Hyde?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Morales?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Myrna. You guys have a great night. Thank you to the staff, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.